Now, a Moscow court has extended the arrest of Wall Street's journalist Evan Gershkovich until the end of June. Gershkovich, who is a US citizen, has already spent nearly a year in a Russian jail after being arrested on alleged espionage charges while on a reporting trip.
Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal and the US government all strongly deny the charges, which carry a sentence of up to 20 years in prison in Russia. President Putin has previously said the US journalist could be released in exchange for a Russian prisoner held abroad, but no such deal has so far been made.
Well, joining us now is Chief International Digital Editor of the Wall Street Journal, Gráinne McCarthy. Gráinne, I mean, you knew Evan personally. Tell us more about when this first happened, the trip he was on and the state he might be in now.
Yeah, no, I know Evan. I'm based here in London, and Evan was working out of London and doing reporting stints in and out to Russia. He was on a reporting trip at the time that he was arrested in a city called Yekaterinburg, which is about 1,000 miles from Moscow. He was a fully accredited journalist to report in Russia and fully credentialed, and he was arrested and he was seized by federal security officials. And the next thing we knew was the next morning when we saw his his image kind of emerge, being like rushed out of a car with his hood deep down over his face. And subsequently he was taken to the Lefortovo prison in Moscow, which is a notorious sort of Stalinist era prison, known for really isolating, people who are kept there. He's been in pre-trial detention since then, and that pre-trial detention was extended this morning till the end of June. This coming Friday, March 29th, will mark 1 year of his life that he has been in that prison.
Dreadful. And it goes without saying these are nonsensical, trumped-up Putin-type charges. He was just doing his job. You worked with him here in London. He was based in this very building. Tell us a little bit about Evan. I mean, I'm assuming a very good journalist, but what kind of a person was he? I mentioned earlier he made the mistake of, while based here, becoming an Arsenal fan, but we won't hold that against him. But he did become very fond of Britain, I understand.
He's actually an ardent Arsenal fan, and he supported Arsenal from the US. Evan is an All-American. His mother describes him as an All-American boy. His parents emigrated to the United States in the 1970s, Soviet Jewish emigres. Evan and his sister Danielle were born in New Jersey, and he has always had a curiosity about Russia because he grew up speaking the language, going to Brighton Beach in Brooklyn where his grandparents were. He had this fascination with Russia. He studied in the United States, but he started his journalism career in New York, and at a certain point he decided he was going to go to Russia. So he worked in Russia for the Moscow Times in Moscow, for AFP, and he joined the Wall Street Journal in January 2022. So a few weeks later, the war in Ukraine started out. So Evan would come back and forth to the London office. He's a gregarious, really sort of, friends describe him as a friend magnet. He's the type of person who just connects people, and it's just been astounding to see how his friends have rallied around him. And a lot of my colleagues at the Wall Street Journal, especially people who were based in the United States, have never met Evan, but it doesn't matter. We've got people who work for us who've never met him in London, and we're just doing everything we can. So he's just that type of guy. He's a massive sports fan. He's a great chef. He's a brilliant journalist.
What sort of updates are you able to get from his incarceration? I mean, the picture's out today. If they are to be believed, he does look in okay health. He doesn't look particularly battered and bruised. And I think people were sort of reporting that he was sort of smiling, looking relaxed. But are you able to get sort of status updates as to the state of his mental health, his physical health?
Yeah, and I always find those moments like this morning a stomach punch. You know, it's at once heartening and heartbreaking to see him. But yeah, we have a Russian law firm that goes to see Evan pretty much every week. Very brave lawyers who have taken on that case in Putin's Russia. So we do hear from him indirectly through those lawyers. We also can write letters to him. Everything that you write to Evan gets read by a censor, someone in the prison, but his friends have set up a system that's working quite well. So you can write to Evan and he can write back. And I encourage everyone I meet to write to Evan. He's a curious young man who's passed his 32nd birthday in prison and is very curious about what's going on in the world. So we do hear from him. Mentally, he's very strong. He exercises as much as he can when you think that he's in a tiny cell 23 of 24 hours a day that he shares with another cellmate. But, you know, he does push-ups, he reads a lot, you know, through the Friends Network again and others, we're able to send him books, we're able to send him, you know, like things to read, news articles. So I would say he's probably doing as well as he could be given these horrendous circumstances.
Tell us a little bit more about this prison he's in. You alluded to it being a tough place. I'm not so sure there is any such thing as a nice, easy Russian prison to be in. But what are conditions like in the jail that he's held in?
I think they're very much designed to make you feel isolated from the rest of the world. So, you know, it was a place where you know, a lot of prisoners were tortured in the 1930s, Russia. So it has this reputation as being somewhere where you go and it just tries to break you down. He is not, you know, he's not in solitary confinement, so there is a cellmate, but think about the size of that room and there's two of them in it. So yeah, there's no, it's definitely not a good place to be. There's not that much interaction with other people. He has interaction with his lawyers. And the US government, so the US ambassador, gets in to visit him. There are consular visits that happen with some degree of regularity.
And what is the hope now going forward? It's been a year since his arrest and detention. He's not even yet really had his day in court on what are essentially just made up, trumped up charges for geopolitical purposes. But what is the hope that there can be some sort of release deal, or what might the time frame of that be?
Yeah, I mean, the most likely playbook here is that Evan gets swapped for somebody that Putin wants back. We've seen a history of this kind of so-called hostage diplomacy that has developed. And Evan is unfortunately a pawn in this game of chess that Putin is playing. So, you know, we've seen Putin has been asked about this a few times. There was a press conference before Christmas when he was asked about Evan, and he seemed to indicate that he would be open to doing a deal. He was asked about it in another interview with Tucker Carlson. He did comment on it at length. So, you know, none of this is in our hands. This is a negotiation that's going on between the US government and the Russian authorities. But, you know, we just want him out as soon as possible. Yeah,
well, we hope you get your colleague back soon. We all kind of feel like we know him now because we have his photo all over the building, and we'll get down and take part in your photo in a little while. Thank you.